Yep.
to get links out. But like I said, after 2, 3 minutes, it'll be okay. But people are pretty excited about you coming on, honestly. My editor was really excited. You got some name recognition, Sean. So I'm really
I'll
excited.
take it, man. I'll take it.
No, seriously. And it's a situation like I told you, just trying to get this thing off the ground and thankfully having some connections within the industry. And honestly, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is professionally and personally, like, being able to, especially male egos and male pride, things like that, but being able to reach out for help, like
Yeah.
being willing to be like, hey, I want to get here. Can you help me? Now, I always been willing to put in the work that gets up to that ask, but it's
Yeah.
like, I think with this situation, this is a big thing for me. Like, and people like it's been a blessing to see um that people really embrace it because I think that I like to think that I'm a good person. Like, I don't really operate in mess and drama and all that. But also I do like I'm never gonna come to somebody without doing the prerequisite work, at least that I can think I can see, um, in order to be like, hey, okay, I'm bringing this. I'm never just coming with my hands straight out. It's more so like this is my body of work so far. What do you think is the next step? So even
Yeah.
our conversation, I really appreciate it, and
Yeah, of course,
like I
man.
said, I want to make like I told you, we live but it's okay. Like I said, going forward, the next 12 to 24 months, hey, whatever God has for me, first off. But second of all, if I can put in the work. I'm not trying to look up in 18 months and be like, oh well, I want to go to sports. What have I done? No, I want to make sure we're getting this knocked out.
100%.
Don,
100%.
how are you doing today, sir? It's not too often that in my side job I get to mix and mingle with a fellow Texan, but today is a rare occasion. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. Now, if you don't watch college football, you don't read college football media, you're probably not tuned in. You're probably not going to watch this on replay. But in case you have been living under a rock, this is Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS sports writer, all knowing CBS college football ball knower, and native Texan. He actually attended Baylor University, resided in the DFW area, still resides in the Dallas area. But now, because he's a national guy, he touches all areas of college football. So, brother, before we get it going, and quick plug for both of us, head of AAJA Texas, y'all. Um, brother, how you feeling? We're about what's today, the 7th. Baylor, obviously, first national big time game on the 29th, but the 30th is the kickoff for college football season. How are you feeling 23 days away from the start of college football season?
You're discounting week 0, man. We got a great Kansas State Iowa State game
Oh,
on the
yes.
23rd. We got 16 days to go. But no, man, I'm excited. It's a crazy time, of course. Like the month of July and August are always so interesting because like you're really like it's here when that happens, right? We got camps, we got interviews, we got like all this sort of stuff opens up right around then. So I'm excited to finally have something real to talk about whenever the Baylor Bears kick off.
That was gonna be actually my next question because, like I said, I think I told you a little bit. Originally being from Memphis, I'm a big sports guy. I'm a big basketball guy, big sports guy in general, but basketball kind of where my heart lays. So it is obviously dry period a little bit after the finals ends. Honestly, we love the WNBA, we love golf, we love all of our Olympic sports. I guess I'd say for lack of a better word, but it's a little bit of a dry spell. So obviously, still work doesn't stop for you. But entertainment wise, how do you deal with this, the dog days of summer before we get into the thick of the college football season and the rest of the seasons?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, obviously, working in sports, right? Because one, I mean, sometimes you embrace having a little bit of a moment to yourself, right? Like you embrace having a little bit of just, whether it is like, okay, let me work on some long-term projects or let me go rewatch some stuff. I definitely stay locked in with Paige Buckets and the Dallas Wings now that she's in town. But but it is like, especially in the month of June, I try to take a month to relax, sit back, plan a little bit, actually spend some time with my wife, and so it's but I mean, you're always paying attention, right? You're always looking for, hey, you know what? Like especially in June, like you have these random appearances by coaches pop up, stories by coaches. This year we had the house case, obviously, all come to fruition during that time. So nothing ever fully stops, but even for somebody who loves sports, obviously, as much as I do, like it's nice to have a moment to be like, what if we just saw a movie instead?
No, I've been cramming a lot of my entertain my Netflix and entertainment stuff
Yeah.
like these last 2 months. I'm watching a really good National Geographic docuseries about Hurricane Katrina that
Mm.
Ryan Coogler produced,
Oh,
which is
wow.
interesting. And like I think it's like going to Prairie View. I have a lot of friends from New Orleans, and it's I know a lot of context, but I was what 5 when the levees broke, so learning about it and they it was some really good filmmaking docuseries. It was really good filmmaking, and I lean more towards the docs because I like learning. I like to learn. I'm a nerd, I guess. So yeah, like you said, it's time. It is those time of the week, this time of the year, where we can kind of catch. Hey, this has been on my Netflix list for about 8 months now. Let me get to it. So between that and I was just channel surfing last night, and I got caught up with A Time to Kill. Old not doc, the old movie. I love John Grisham. I love John Grisham and James Patterson. So I got stuck on the movie. And as you know, as a minority man in the South, it explores a lot of it was in 1996, first of all, but it explores a lot of concepts that are still relevant today, based down in rural Mississippi. They got a lot of heavy hitters: Matthew McConaughey, Sam Jackson, Sandra Bullock, Kevin Spacey. I don't know where to say that name anymore. So it was. I'm not even a movie guy in general, but that was a good watch. I caught like the last 45 minutes of it. Shehan, as my audience may know, I got this cowboy hat on. Backstory: I'm not that big of a Texan yet. I'll let Jill be the resident Texan. I went impromptu to a Beyonce concert last month in Houston. I went to Houston to see my cousin. She was trying to set a ticket. I went down to hang out with her anyways. She was like, "Can you come with me to the Beyonce concert?" I was like, "Try to set a ticket. Get your money first." But I was like, "I came down to hang out with you, and I guess we'll hang out at the concert." So no, I did not just buy this hat for this segment, but and what we're about to talk about, I guess it fits. The Panhandle, North Texas, area that we're both familiar with. If you don't know about the Panhandle, you're not a Texan. That is North Texas. That's the little bar area of Texas, y'all. As we both know, not a lot goes on up in the Panhandle, usually. But a 5,000 word article that you just put out, I think got you an award, I believe you said. Um, just talk to me a little bit about the burgeoning national college power in Texas Tech, what all you learned about it in your research for this article, and how you think this relates to the rest of the Big 12.
Well, it's interesting, right? So I mean, I think that as people who have been around Baylor know, like there are 7 power conference schools in the state of Texas, and 6 of them have been relevant in the past 10 years. And the other is Texas Tech. Texas Tech hasn't won 10 games since 2008. They haven't won a conference title of any sort since 1993. They haven't won an outright conference title since 1955. Like, this is one of the more underrated mediocre programs over not just recent history, but like history in general. And I think that what they have done well, though, historically, is they've innovated and tried to be ahead of the curve. You saw this with the development of the air raid in the 2000s over there. You saw this with some of the stuff they did offensively with Patrick Mahomes and the quarterbacks they had come through there. But they feel like this is a moment now to be even more aggressive with the birth of this new system of player compensation, salary cap, all that sort of stuff. So of course, the story really started for them in July 2024 when their mega booster Cody Campbell came to the table and said, basically, we need to be preparing for the December transfer period, and we need to have a plan in place so that we can move faster and more efficiently than anybody else in the marketplace. And also, we're going to have essentially unlimited funds at that time because I'm going to help provide them. And so they go in, they spend as much, if not more money than anybody in the transfer portal window in December, bring in the number 2 transfer class in the nation, only behind LSU, who has a bigger class. And now, for good reason, they are on the short list of top Big 12 contenders in 2025. They especially prioritize the trenches. That's, when I talk to their GM, who, by the way, a lot of figures in this story are going to be familiar to Baylor fans because a lot of them actually came from Baylor. Joey McGuire was an associate head coach, of course, at Baylor. James Blanchard was a scouting assistant. Now he's Texas Tech's GM. A bunch of their assistant coaches and off-field staff also were former players or coaches at Baylor, including James Blanchard's assistant, Bryant Nance. So, like a bunch of these guys have Baylor ties. And so, but they've really tried to be like, look, we want to build the Philadelphia Eagles of college football, at least in the Big 12. We want to be so good in the trenches that, yeah, we'll have good quarterbacks, but that's not really that important. We're going to try to be a team that bulldozes everybody else. And so it's a big swing and one that's never really been tried exactly like this in college football, especially at a place like Texas Tech that historically has been, a little bit of a woebegone program. So a lot of expectations this year, but a lot of excitement as well.
Yes, and this is not Texas Tech on the inside. This is Baylor, but like I said, it's Big 12. We'll throw it up in there. Texas throw it up all up in there. And one tweet that I saw I saw a rival tweet this out, and first, and then I thought of you because I was reading your article, and then I saw
Mhm.
you reply to that same day. I'll just read the tweet. Texas Tech General Manager James Blanchard underpaid elite recruits. If somebody's underpaying an elite guy, only crazy, crazy. Shout out John Calipari and my Memphis Tigers. He heard only $100,000. He'll be rolling over in Arkansas Blue right now, Arkansas Red right now. Only paying him 100,000, 200,000. I'm gonna go give him 300 to 400,000 and go steal. And you quote tweeted something I thought about kind of right off the bat. How do we know? How do we have a true valuation of these guys coming out of high school, what they're worth and what they're not? Obviously, if Ohio State gave Jeremiah Smith last year $100,000, that might be the biggest discount in college football. But you probably have some other guys that were just as high ranked as Jeremiah Smith that definitely were not worth that, were misevaluated, and may never be worth that. I just read your tweet for the audience and say, this is very interesting. Essentially, Tech is betting that all elite high school recruits are monetarily undervalued. The risk is if a high school recruit doesn't pan out, it's dead money. That's why some have been more relinquent. It's an aggressive swing with massive upside. You kind of laid out your thoughts. I mean, you kind of gave your omniscient view of that. But what do you personally think of this process of they invested heavy in the transfer portal, but now they're willing to go boom or bust in terms of shelling out big money for guys that never played college football down.
Well, and no, and everybody right now is trying to figure out this strategy. I got a great opportunity to talk to a lot of coaches at the Texas High School Coach Association convention. All 13 FBS head coaches were down there. And this is like an existential question that a lot are asking because just as an example of how tech can be aggressive, right? It's they apparently guaranteed a 3-year contract with their 5-star offensive tackle, Felix Ojo, number 6 overall player in the top 247. Well, another team that was really after him and offered him comparable money was Texas. But Steve Sarkisian explicitly told me, we don't want to sign multi-year deals because as the rules work right now, it's binding for us, but it's not binding for them. So we're locked into this contract with them, but like they can leave whenever and we have no recourse. And so Texas, for example, they don't want to take that kind of risk on. Well, Texas Tech is willing to take that kind of risk on. And the other piece too is like, there's a program like Baylor is kind of in between those two things, right? Because Baylor's put together one of their best recruiting classes that they've ever had. They have 3 top 100 players, which is tied with Tech for most in the Big 12. Like that's the level that they're recruiting at right now. And again, so they have been very uh, targeted with what? There are going to be certain guys who are developmental players for us who maybe get low offers, maybe no NIL coming out of high school. And there are certain guys who will get much bigger offers because we feel like they can be tent poles of our recruiting class. Carlton, obviously a guy that, we've talked about before, right? A top 40 player. Well, I don't know his contract details, but I'm sure that they probably did a good job with him because they know it's not just landing Jamarian Carlton, it's also the relationships that he has with other guys in Central Texas, like Jamarian Vincent and London Smith and guys like that. So again, these top guys kind of have a compounding effect, is what Texas Tech and Baylor are betting on. Whereas, like for Texas, landing Felix Ojo would be nice, but like if they don't land Felix Ojo, they'll just go after another five-star and they'll just go after another player. So the sort of relative value of these high school recruits to programs like Baylor and Texas Tech might not be as high as they are or might be higher rather compared to a program like Texas or Texas A&M who really is viewing it more NFLized of like let's not overinvest in kids who haven't played football before.
So, like I said, we got a little bit of time. Like, I'm really interested now in talking about this. Um, it's two-parter for me. From your perspective, doing all about, you do a lot of writing around NIL and stuff like that. Shehan is a general manager at takes the insert Power Five college football program here with comparable 25 top 25 comparable resources. How much? What is the monetary valuation that you would put on a five-star recruit? And obviously, number five is different from number 30, but in a general sense, how much is that? What is the monetary valuation that you would be willing to put on a five-star guy for 1 year? And I have my next question next.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'll actually quote something that Joe McGuire told me specifically. It's that, you know what, like in football, the quarterbacks are worth the most. The guys who protect the quarterbacks are worth the most. The guys who get after the quarterbacks are worth the most. Those are the three most valuable pieces on a team, right? So a lot of it is positional value. Because, for example, I mean, a running back can be awesome, but like maybe that's not worth as much relative value, right? I mean, we're having this conversation in the NFL right now. Maybe a Jeremiah Smith level receiver is worth that kind of investment, but like maybe the number 25 player is not worth that kind of investment, just relatively speaking, right? So if you're talking about an Ojo, if you're talking about I mean, a Jamarian, if you're talking about somebody like that, obviously a top quarterback. I mean, when you're talking quarterbacks, like we already saw this in the pre-cap era, with Nico Iamaleava, who signed a 3-year, $8 million contract before he had ever played a college football game, right? Like that. So it's not unusual to be in the millions range. I think that the quarterbacks are always going to be the very top of the market. Again, and I think that when you're talking about high school recruits in the trenches, because again, the number that I've reported on Jamarian, or sorry, not on Jamarian, on Felix Ojo, is he's getting just under 800K a year guaranteed for 3 years. Obviously, it can be negotiated up, but like again, the thing is, right, like he probably is not going to be a starter year one. You've probably got 800K in dead cap in year one, right? So that's some sort of the trade-off that you have to have. If you have a kid who's willing to or who's able to play right away, then maybe, again, if you have a defensive end who's game ready week one, maybe you start pushing seven figures. If you have a kid who's going to take 2 years of development, maybe it's a lower number, but that's kind of the questions right now that programs are having to answer for themselves.
Okay, okay, okay. I try to be active listening, and I got some more questions coming from this. I promise y'all, we'll get to Baylor. So it's Big 12. Y'all don't. Um, What is your evaluation of this type of method? And we'll get into we'll get into it a little later because even DA here emphasized high school recruiting versus portal guys. He got some key portal gets, but he spoke on he verbalized it that like we're emphasizing high school recruits. You can I you say you kind of you saw it play out with his actions in terms of some of the 4-star guys he got in the Central Texas area. So, what is your evaluation of that type of roster building? And is this reserved for the elites of the elites in terms of a Lubbock, Texas, a Austin, Texas, a Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where if you don't have money growing on trees, this is not a sustainable way to run your program.
Well, the thing is though, is that like essentially every power conference school is going to be working with the 20.5 million. Maybe there'll be individual exceptions, but like that's the goal right now. Now the question is always going to be, okay, which schools figure out ways to try to get around that cap or build supplemental, all that sort of stuff, right? That's always going to be a little bit of a question. But generally speaking, most schools are going to like Boston College is most likely going to be working with $20.5 million. Wake Forest is fully funded right now. Like all that sort of stuff, which like these programs that historically have not been able to hang in any meaningful way. Um, now there's a whole other conversation, for another podcast of like what percent of the cap is going to football. Some are looking to 12 million, some are looking to 16 million, some are higher than that. It just depends on the program. Um, and so that's part of the question. But like, I mean, Texas Tech, for example, they want to be competitive in men's basketball. They want to be competitive in softball. They're not throwing all of their cap at football. So the thing is like generally speaking, uh, again, so much of this is going to be about cap management. And what I mean by that too is if you are Baylor, if you are Texas Tech, actually, let's even take it to a less moneyed school like Iowa State, right? What you are trying to do is not just for the 2025 season, but for all the seasons after that, create as positive a cap situation for yourself as possible. And the way that you get the quote unquote best deals and value contracts is by developing and retaining your own guys as
Mm,
opposed to going out and buying. Because for example, David Bailey, who Texas Tech brought in from Stanford,
yeah.
got more than $2 million for one season, right? Like that's and John Mateer at Oklahoma, the quarterback, $3+ million, right? Like that's the kind of money that we're talking about. Well, I can say like I don't have an exact number on Sawyer, but like it's way less than those guys, right? Way less than those
Under a
guys.
million?
Under a million is what I've heard. And so like when you took now he took a discount frankly to stay, which was because he wanted to be here, of course. But let's just think about that in terms of cap management, right? If we talk about this with rookie quarterbacks in the NFL and them
Brock
being on
Purdy
rookie
situation. You can spend.
exactly.
Come on
If
now.
you are working under a cap, and like this past year wasn't fully capped because it was a transition year, but like let's just say heading forward, right? If you're paying your quarterback, let's just say 1 million, for example, and X school is paying theirs 3 million, and your quarterback is better, like think about how much better use of money that is when you're trying to plan for a $15 million allocation, right? So that's the biggest thing, and that's why you see Big 12 schools especially hitting high school recruiting so hard is because if you get a guy who's a borderline blue chip, right? Like the 350th best player in the country, and he turns into a really good player, and you gave him a little NIL at the beginning, and then eventually you have to up his money, you are still saving so much money versus trying to take that player from another school where he's out on the open market because he already probably wants to stay there and is happy where he is, and that it puts you in a much better negotiating position to retain your own guys as opposed to try to find somebody totally new who's probably just going to take top dollar.
Oh, this is fascinating. You throw
There's
out
a
some.
lot going on, man. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Last one for me on this, and then we'll get into the Baylor stuff. Because like I said, this has just kind of been fascinating. Just and now we can kind of just do a lightning round, like what you know, quick yes or no. We'll get into it. Obviously, 2025. Shout out my editor Trent. Bryce Underwood, top quarterback in the country. Michigan commit late. Michigan commit LSU flip. I was very disappointed. I started the SEC thing on Netflix. I'm like, I'm a Southern guy, whatever. I'm like, oh, we're gonna get the SEC stuff. Brian Kelly, Boston, Massachusetts native Brian Kelly was the first coach, and I was like, I'll watch this later. But they got in the Shane Beamer, so I liked it. Bryce Underwood, Michigan flip, Michigan native, Michigan flip. Looking at the 2026 class, first overall player, Phase on Brandon, University of Tennessee. From the Memphis, UT is Tennessee. Out here is Texas. Are both of these guys getting over a million and a half
Oh yeah.
to commit to these schools? Are we talking two for a
So so the
number one overall player in the country, top quarterback in the
Yeah,
country?
yeah. I can't remember the exact number that was rumored for Underwood, but like again, he signed at least part of it before the cap, right? So like he would have gotten a lot of it up front is part of it. But yeah, well over two. Well over two. And guaranteed over the course of multiple years. Now again, the way that that might be delivered to him might be a little bit different so that they can try to not have it count against the cap in year 2 or 3. But yeah, no, definitely over two. I'm not super familiar with Faison Brandon Steele, but like I'd be surprised if it wasn't at least pushing to with the way that things are. And like again, the thing is, let's just take Bryce for example, right? Okay, let's say that his cap hit is $2 million this year, and let's say he doesn't start. Well, that's $2 million of your cap sitting on the bench, right? And that's also a complication that you kind of have to work through is like, how do you balance that of having your biggest investment on the team potentially not on the field, but maybe that's the best thing for your 2026 team if he sits and waits a year.
And that goes into the whole situation where like is there it turns into a professional thing to where you're not gonna have, a lot of these coaches aren't gonna want to have $1 million, $2 million sitting on the bench. So even if Bryce under like let's say Miller Moss was a room Michigan target, if Miller Moss transfers to Michigan, I don't think I have a question whether or not Miller Moss is more prepared to play college football this year, but you're getting Miller Moss for way less than you're getting for Bryce Underwood. So does it come to play versus politics, things like that? Man, this is really fascinating. This is
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah. Well, and by the way, just to close this out and also transition us to Baylor a little bit, that was 100% a factor last year of what of part that went into the quarterback battle between Sawyer Robertson and DeQuan Finn, because DeQuan
mm.
Finn was the free agent quarterback who got a big contract, and Sawyer Robertson was the incumbent who wasn't really expected to play. So, like again, obviously the coaching staff eventually has to make that decision of what who makes sense to be on the field. But like again, it's like we had this conversation with the Falcons, right? It's like, okay, well, Michael Penix maybe is better week one than Kirk Cousins, but do you just eat all that money? Like, do you just like say, like, we're just gonna ignore that you have a $35 million cap hit? Like, it's easier said than done when you've put so much institutional support into an individual.
Man, I know we said last, but I just like I said, this is so interesting to
Yeah, yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah,
Is there any provisions? I mean, I'm not fighting for no universities how long they've been making money off student
yeah, yeah,
athletes,
yeah.
but are there provisions like you talk about DeQuan Finn, 3 games of the year as parent, you're not going to be starting for this team. So are there provisions to be like, hey, you're not your money was guaranteed, your money was banked on you being the starter. You don't start anymore.
The
Give me
short
something.
answer is no. The short answer is no. You're
Wow.
kind of locked in. And so again, that goes back to what I talked about with Steve Sarkisian versus Texas Tech of Steve
Hmm.
Sarkisian saying we're only signing 1 year deals because we gain no benefit from signing you to a multi-year deal, whereas you obviously can benefit a lot if you're not good and decide to stick around, right? So that's again, that's a big thing that's being managed right now. Again, I think that that's something that Baylor's evaluating right now, right? Is like the 1 year deals protect you a little bit more, but also is it a competitive advantage to say, well, we'll actually be aggressive and give you two when other schools aren't willing to do that?
In a situation, obviously, I probably would get the Baylor, y'all. It
Yeah,
would be like a Matthew Sluka situation where, like, hey,
yeah,
I balled out 3 games. I'm gonna negotiate up. Oh,
yeah,
no, buddy, we got you locked in. We
yeah.
believed in you. You probably wasn't even worth this dollar for dollar when you signed it. And yeah, man, this is fascinating. This is fascinating, but also a little bit concerning. Not gonna lie. I'm all in favor of student athletes getting their money, but it does seem it's
We
fitting
got
that
to
it
formalize some of this stuff more
seems like
than
it's a wild,
formalize.
wild west. Skip to the
That's
love it.
yes, yes, and you know what? That's of course part of the crux of how that story came together.
Yes, yes. 30 minutes in, it was all Big 12. It's okay. Jahan, as a DFW native Baylor graduate, in your current role writing nationally for CBS, how is Baylor, but more specifically Dave Aranda, viewed in the national college football scope? I would know about the down year 3-9. We know about his first year's Sugar Bowl victory. We know about the down years coming into this year. There's some momentum locally, or there's some excitement locally. But how has that translated nationally? And like I said, what are expectations nationally for Baylor football in 2025?
Well, I think that there's never, ever, ever been a question that Dave Aranda is one of the like great football minds ever, frankly, right? Especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, before he came to Baylor, he was the highest paid defensive coordinator in all of college football, helped lead LSU to a title, was the highest paid defensive coordinator at Wisconsin. Like, he is seen as a football savant and one of like the great defensive coordinators in history. Um, that said, you talk to Dave and like you see him at he's a quieter, more introverted guy. And So, the question has always kind of been, okay, we know he can coach football. Can he be a CEO? And I think that what was so interesting about the early moment of his tenure was, you saw the moments again where, like, in 2021, he has a great team. He coaches great football. It works. He kind of has some issues putting a roster together. He doesn't want to embrace NIL early in his career the same way that maybe you needed to, right? Like you talk about, again, programs like Texas A&M and Tennessee and Miami that were aggressive with NIL. Well, Baylor was kind of the opposite early in his tenure. So I think that people view Dave Aranda in 2025 as a coach who has finally figured himself out and who he wants to be and what he should be as a head coach. Um, I think he's done a great job of building a staff around him of both assistant coaches and also people in their front office who are able to complement some of his weaknesses and build up some of the things that were question marks about him. I think that they found a really interesting way to approach recruiting and roster building. I think he's gotten some, and I think that also when you just look at the roster that he's put together, I mean, like they are doing a fantastic job, I think, of finding these guys and developing them, right? I mean, a player like Josh Cameron at wide receiver, who was a former walk-on, so some of the Jackie Marshall, obviously a player who on the defensive line who's been injured a little bit, but now all of a sudden, he's kind of jumping up. Dave Aranda took over the defense last year. It's no coincidence. The linebackers have been exceptional. Keaton Thomas kind of being that top guy. So like I think that people view him as a guy who's starting to figure out who he is and who he should be as a head coach in college football. And like the expectations nationally are very much that Baylor should be in the Big 12 title race and that they should be right at the top of the conference. There wasn't an official media poll, but if there was, I think they would have been picked probably top four in the conference, in that top group with a chance to maybe win the Big 12 as well. So like this is a big year, especially after they ended 2024 on a six-game winning streak. This is kind of the year where it has to culminate.
No, and that's I love to hear it personally because I get to watch some good football, but also we had Ryan Roberts on from A to Z Sports that kind of echoed that sentiment in terms of like not only this year but program expectation wise, there's no reason with how wide open the Big 12 is that theoretically you shouldn't be competing for a Big 12 title, which means you should be competing for a playoff spot, which seems like a kind of a whoa expectation. You realize it's 12 teams, but also yeah, the Big 12 is not as I see it, there's even been a separation of a little bit between the Big Ten and SEC and the rest of the other power conferences to where, like, for the most part, I wouldn't even say top, you just your Big 12 and your SEC, those are your more than likely they're gonna compromise, they're gonna compose either half or a third of your playoff, year to year. For the most part, the Big 12 and the SEC, they're gonna compete for those other 6 to 8 spots. But there's no really dominant alpha in either conference, I would say. Obviously, we know normative powers like Clemson and Florida State. We know how that went for them last year. Clemson a little better than Florida State, for sure. But yeah, in the Big 12, after you get the Deion, Shador, Travis Hunter year, there's no really alpha. So talking about that, and talked about, DA's like his emphasis on recruiting stuff like that. You talked to me about the cap, which it was interesting to me, but you talk about his current recruiting strategy, development, emphasis on high school recruiting. Will Baylor continue? Will they have to continue to go that route, or will they be able to, at some point, pull out the big guns and compete with a Texas Tech, and be like, hey, we can go band for band in terms of getting a 5-star, getting a Jamarian Carlton, or whether it's university resources or just investment in general, will it have to continue to be like development, hitting high school recruits that type of way?
Well, I think so. So let's just say, for example, that like obviously this will never in reality happen, but like let's say that you eliminate every piece of compensation from college football, right? And everybody gets zero, right? Well, like that's actually going to put Texas in a better position, right? Because that's going to put Alabama in a better position. So the
Brand,
thing is, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So even putting money aside, it's actually like you're working from again a level of slight disadvantage because you don't have the level of brand awareness and that sort of thing, right? So I don't think that it's that they're being forced to approach this way. I think that it's that they view it as a huge inefficiency. And actually, I
Mm.
think that right now in the SEC, like the reason that Georgia and Texas right now are kind of lapping the rest of the SEC is because like they're the only two who have committed to 3 to 4 year builds. Like you look at so many of the other, I mean, Ole Miss, we'll kind of see what happens with LSU this year. Like you're seeing so many teams try to fill short-term holes instead of building rosters long-term that make sense. Well, Texas and Georgia haven't been those teams. And you look last year, like Texas has an offensive line of five homegrown players, and it's the best in the SEC. You look at Georgia on defense; it's all homegrown players. Like, yeah, you bring in individuals to fill spots, but like I mean, I think that it's not just in the Big 12. I think everywhere. If they could do it well, they want to get high school guys that they believe in and turn them into college stars that they believe in. So I don't think that this is by any means them feeling like they need to compromise or not having investment. I think it's very much, hey, if we get guys who are very good and make them great, again, we're going to be able to retain those players better than having to go out into the market and overspend I mean, again, like you look at a school this year because they're in a huge year, like Oklahoma. Oklahoma had to pay again 3+ million for a quarterback and 2+ million for a running back because they need them this year, right? Well, like Baylor has built up those guys to where they have them already in Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington. And by the way, those two guys might be better than the two guys that Oklahoma has.
Well, my Baylor fans would love to hear that, and situation. We don't even know how Jaden Ida gonna go from playing at Cal in front of 100 people versus playing in OU and yeah, Gaylord. So it's I love like I said I said this to Ryan. I love to learn. I love to learn in our conversation. I'm learning a lot. That's why I dragged on the NIL thing so long. Last one in terms of kind of state of the program, we kind of transition to like 2025 roster kind of this year. Like you said, like yeah, DA, we know what he did with that LSU defense. They are all the talent on the offense, but LSU, before Brian Kelly got there, has always been known as a defensive program. So we know he kind of got his roots there. Um, where do you see the trajectory of the Baylor program in terms of up, down, or maybe stagnant? And do you see Aranda as a guy that could be a Bill Snyder situation where he could be here 10, 15, 20 years?
Well, I think that you never assume too much just in this era, right? Like nobody, like it's rare for coaches to stick around forever, right? But one thing that I will say is that I had a conversation a few years ago with Baylor's athletic director, Mac Rhodes, and like it was part of the equation to bring him back off of the 3-9 season that they feel like he is somebody that if he figures it out is perfect for Baylor and wants to be at Baylor. So I think that like I think that the coach at Baylor who everybody would know is Grant Taff. Grant Taff was there for 15 years in the late 70s to the early 90s. Well, like I think that Baylor sees a lot of Grant Taff in Dave Aranda. And, again, like they see him as somebody that they'd love to retain for a long time, as long as the results obviously are what they need to be. And so I mean, back when one, when sort of NIL and all that came into play, and two, when realignment happened, I mean, people expected that Baylor was going to be, if not the, then one of the signature programs of the new Big 12. And Dave Aranda was a big part of it. And they had they went through their lumps over the past, couple of years before last year as they tried to figure out how they wanted to do things from a roster perspective. But like, that's the expectation here. I mean, people look back at, the struggles that Baylor had in the 90s and 2000s, but like the level of investment right now is elite. Like they are up there with anybody in the Big 12. They've got the stadium, they've got the facilities, they've got the football operations center, they've got the investment monetarily in the roster, they've got the booster and donor support. Like all this stuff is there. And so no, I mean this is a program people see on the upswing. And I mean you obviously mentioned Dave Aranda and his defense. Like that's kind of the final piece that needs to come together because this is an offense that should be at worst top three in the Big 12 with potential. I mean, I would make the case they have the best quarterback and the best running back in the Big 12 in 2025. And they've got a lot of options at wide receiver that they should feel good about. And they've got an offensive line that returns four starters. So like the offense should be really, really good, like playoff level good. The question is going to be okay, year two of Dave Aranda calling the defense full time, are they able to grow? And they made, I think, some huge additions on the defensive side of the ball, probably none bigger than they brought in Paul Gonzalez as defensive backs coach. He came over from TCU and he was part of coaching two Thorpe Award winners over there, Trey Hodges Tomlinson and Trayvon Merrick. So like it was a big addition. I spoke to Dave about it earlier this offseason, and like the thought process is very much like, you know what, like Paul Gonzalez believes that someday he can be a defensive coordinator and a defensive play caller, and he wanted to learn from the best, and that's Dave Aranda. So if he's able to make an immediate impact with some of the personnel they have in that room, like again, the sky is the limit for this team in the Big 12.
No, that's a fact because I know as much as it hurt DA's heart, the two things that I mean, the defense was just bad in 2024. You can't got no way around it. I was gonna say like certain parts of it, but when you can't stop the run and you have a weak secondary, that's your defense right there. So you either got to stop the run or stop the pass, and Baylor did neither effectively. You giving me some story ideas. I appreciate you helping me out with my job because a guy that a lot of people were excited about in 2023, Caden Jenkins, had a little bit of regression last year, but uber talented kid. I like him in this week one matchup against either Cam Coleman or Eric Singleton. I've seen him in person. Long, lengthy guy. It looks like a wing out there running. He need to be running. He need to be catching some blocks from John Morant somewhere. But long, lengthy kid. We know what Cam Coleman do is 6'4". He has elite short area quickness, and I think that he'll be able to bother Singleton in the slot. I think he can go step with step for them. So yes, like you said, like I said, stopping the run or stopping the pass game was a strength for neither at Baylor 2023 or 2024. And yeah, you talk about Paul Gonzalez, a guy that I need to get in and meet. But I think that if that ambition, I think that will go a long way in terms of building up DA's defense because as we both know, the level of quarterback play in the Big 12 is high. A lot of high ceiling guys, a lot of low floors too. But there are definitely a lot of situations where like you're gonna be, Sawyer Robertson is more of a steady, even kill guy. You're gonna have a lot of situations where the other quarterback may be more talented than Sawyer in 2025, in the Big 12. John did a lot of talking around. We did a lot of setting the stage. 2025, year 6 that they ran this tenure here at Baylor. Sawyer Robertson. I did a whole thing with him with Todd McShay, or not with Todd McShay, talking about Todd McShay saying he could be this year's Cam Ward. You already said that you think that he could potentially be the best quarterback in the Big 12. Is he a guy that can win you games, or is he a guy that needs that game manager? Let me stop answering.
No, no, he's 100% a guy who can win you games. I mean, you saw that in the second half of last year. Like he was the catalyst behind their 6 game winning streak. He frankly outplayed Garrett Nussmeier in the bowl game. Obviously, Nussmeier had a fantastic game too, but like Sawyer went, I think it was 445 and 3 touchdowns or something like that in the bowl game against LSU. So like, that's serious business. And the question is more going to be, okay, do they have the weapons around him to take him from great to elite, right? Like more from a statistical perspective, because like when you watched him last year, I mean, he is somebody who extends plays with his feet, like not just as a runner, but as a buying time passer to allow things to open up downfield. He has an offensive line that I expect to take another step under second year offensive line coach Mason Miller. Like, so no, I mean he is somebody. I think that. I quoted, I believe it was a former or it's a current AFC North scout was quoted over at ESPN, and he said he is what people want Drew Allard to be, and like that's pretty incredible praise, right? Like that is hey, this is maybe a first round pick. Now I think. Look, he's got to tighten up his release a little bit. He's got a little bit of a long release. I think that he has a very good arm. He doesn't have a cannon necessarily, but he makes up for it with fantastic decision making, fantastic identification. He's in an offense right now that really I think is a good fit for him. I'll also say I have a story coming out the week of the Auburn game on Sawyer where I got to kind of talk to him about basically being one of the last quarterbacks that was handpicked by Mike Leach, like that's like that's a big compliment, right? And so it's no, I mean I think he is like he is 100% the kind of player that if he hits his ceiling, like he can go out there and truly win games and potentially again like swing a Big 12 title race.
So talking about that, kind of knew that, but I wanted your confirmation. Um, Jake Spitball, OC, year two for him, year two for Sawyer as well. First year as a first time full time starter. We know about Spitball's history with Sumlin, coaching Geno Smith in West Virginia, coaching Johnny Manziel. What kind of jump do you think that Sawyer can get with a not a Kingsbury level guru, but a guy that has had demonstrated success with college quarterbacks in different ways too at this level?
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at what Spavital's done over his tenure, like he's coached some of the better quarterbacks in the country, right? Like, Jared Goff, he's coached, he was part of Will Greer's final season at West Virginia. Like, he's been intertwined with Dana Holgerson at a bunch of his stops. And also, he's been a head coach. It didn't go well for him, but like he got good production out of the quarterback. So, like, I think that, and actually, probably the season that I might have actually been most impressed by Spav wasn't one of his like super productive offenses. It was actually when he was offensive coordinator at Cal the year before he took over at Baylor, because Cal had really inconsistent protection, and he just did such a good job of moving the pocket and moving the game around to make up for that. And so I mean, like they went toe to toe with Auburn in week two, back when he was the OC there. He was kind of one of the guys who helped develop Fernando Mendoza, who's now the starting quarterback at Indiana. He obviously worked with Jaden Knott and coached him to his best season. So like I think the versatility is something that's really been underrated with what Spavital brings to the table. And I think that again, you just see Sawyer get more comfortable in this offense. I spoke to Dave about Sawyer, and one thing that he said was like he remembers early in his tenure, whenever Sawyer first got here, Sean Bell was the quarterback coach, and every time that Sawyer would throw a pass, he'd basically turn and look at Sean Bell to make sure like that he approved, and like he's not doing that anymore, right? Like he knows what he needs. He knows when he's done things right. He knows when he's made a mistake. And I think that again, I get into a lot of this more in my story that's coming out, but I think that it's just going to be a really, really solid marriage. And I don't think, I mean, again, like Spavital had a ton of offers from other places. And I think that the idea that he got another year to work with Sawyer Robertson was a huge part of why he came back.
Mm, okay. So I want to go a little bit more into a little bit of the roster situation. I'll talk about some potential breakout candidates, and then we'll go some key matchups. As you know, some big non-conference matchups for Baylor to start the year. We'll do best case, worst case scenario, and then a couple mailbag questions, and then we'll get you up out of here. But the next line on my breakdown literally says Bryson Washington love session. Because that's a guy that I don't think he's getting a lot of national recognition coming off 1,000-yard season as a freshman, a former three-star recruit. So this is not a guy that we expected to be doing something like this, at least this early. Just talk a little bit about give my boy Bryson Washington, honestly, this Baylor running back room as a whole, some love. And what are some of the other offensive playmakers that you think can really supplement Sawyer in 2025?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think that one thing that impacts the way that like Bryson is seen is that like he doesn't have the prototypical like athletic profile that you think of from great running backs. Like he's a tall guy, but he's kind of lanky. He's not like a bruiser. He's not
Ball type of
necessarily a
situation,
yeah, yeah, he's not a 4-3 guy, right? Like, but it's like this perfect like mix of traits that just works for his body type. He's again, he's really lanky, so he's able to get through holes at a high level. He's still big and strong. He's got great leg drive. Like he has just turned himself into such a unique but such an effective running back. And I think that actually like because Sawyer I think was playing pretty well all year, but the thing that changed during the 6 game winning streak was Bryson came to the table and they were able to run play action off of him and they were able to run block at a higher level and they were able to just kind of lean on their base offense in ways that they just weren't able to do before Bryson entered the lineup. And I think he's just been so huge for this team. And again, like I think that hitting into the year, like he is to me the clear running back one in the conference. Like he is the clear top dog. Again, I think that what's going to be fascinating in year two is like, because I got a chance to watch some of his games back when he was at Franklin High School, down in the Brazos Valley, and um, again, he was a workhorse back. He helped drag them basically to the state title game at a 3A school. So now, the question is going to become, okay, well, like can you add that dimension as a pass catcher? Because I think that that's really the thing that can take him from being like a really, really good running back to like an all-American type player. If he's able to kind of come in, and again, I mentioned obviously what Spav did with Jaden Ott, like, and I don't think that Bryson's ever going to be quite that kind of pass
And
catcher.
not the home run threat. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but I mean, I think that the question is like, okay, can you put yourself in the right spot? Can you, be reactive? And I think that he has the skill set to do that, to be a safety valve for this offense, and potentially like run some leak stuff and stuff like that. So I think that he is somebody who is already so good, and he has a chance to become even better in 2025.
Mm. Okay, last one for me in terms of this season. We talked about obviously the high school recruiting emphasis. What are some potential breakout candidates for this roster this year? Our guy Ryan Roberts, he was big on Michael Trigg. Obviously,
Yeah,
maybe not a breakout guy, had a productive year last year, but he sees Trigg as a guy that could be a top 60 pick with the talent
sure.
off the field stuff that needs to be cleaned up. But if this is a boom for a boom bust guy, he think Ryan is solidly entrenched like, hey, this could be your tight end one in the draft class next year in the top 50 pick. What are
Mhm.
some breakout candidates for you in terms of maybe a high school guy that may get some early action, or maybe a Calvin Simpson Hunt, that maybe they saw a lot of special teams stuff that may could become a foundation of your DB room. Who are some of these guys that could break out for Baylor on either side of the ball this year?
Well, I will tell you, it's funny for me because I feel like I'm like so deep in the weeds that I'm like, oh well, everybody already knows Michael Trigg. Everybody like obviously everybody knows Michael Trigg. He's but again, it's like you go national, it's like I guess it's not really the case the same way. But I mean I think Michael Trigg is going to be astonishing in this offense. Like I mean, you saw the moments where he was locked in and it was just he had some games that were crazy last year, and I expect that to only continue in 25. Now, like you said, I mean, there's a reason he never really popped at Ole Miss, and it's because he struggled to be consistent, not just on the field, but off the field as well, right? It seems like they've done a good job with him, just hearing second and third hand. And so if he understands what's available to him and what he has a chance to do in 2025, like that is somebody who could be, I mean, it's crazy to hear that Ryan thinks he could be like a top 50 guy, but like it's not out of the realm of possibility at all. Like you look at his athletic profile, I mean, there's a reason he was at USC and Ole Miss. And I think that in the second half of the year, he started to realize, oh, I have a chance to be like a big time player. As a transfer coming in, Travion Barnes at linebacker. I mean, it's crazy actually. Again, you sort of wonder how in the weeds you really are, but like Travion was a 100 tackle guy at FIU, and he joins a 100 tackle guy in Keaton Thomas, who I talked about earlier. Like this is as uh aggressive and productive a linebacker combo as there is like in the sport right now. Like they now, of course, it's a big transition up with moving up from FIU to the Big 12, but like you look at his athletic profile, I mean, he's a little undersized, but not really. Like, he's right around 6 foot, and like I think that he's somebody who uh just again like people remember this player who have been around the program for a little while. There was a linebacker Taylor Young back in 2014 through 16 who was 5'8" maybe, like he really like small guy.
Yeah. That's
But
Buda
like
Baker.
he yeah, and but he just like was so good at football, right? Like he just knew exactly where to be. He made the right decisions. He was in the right places, and I love the idea of somebody like Travion Barnes coming in, working with Dave Aranda, who again is a linebackers coach by trade, by the way. And potentially, I see him as somebody who can be a big time player. You obviously mentioned Calvin Simpson Hunt, obviously coming over from Ohio State. I think that he is somebody who I'm really excited about. I think that he's somebody who, like, again, athletically at corner has a chance to be one of the best athletes on the team. I'm curious how long it takes for him to kind of be ready for that moment, but like athletically, like it says something to me that they're already putting him in front of the cameras, right? It tells me that they're already seeing him as somebody who has a chance to maybe be a contributor right away. So there's at least a couple of guys that come immediately to mind.
No, that was transparently talking to some of the media guys, talking to some of the SID folks there. They're like, yeah, he's gonna be a starter. And even
Wow.
talking about him, because like you said, like the guy they put in front of the camera, you're not making nonsense
Yeah.
available for media unless it's the
Yeah.
quarterback. And talking to him, he was like, yeah, I'm probably one of the fastest guys on the team, and I live with the linebackers. And then his teammates said that it's like, oh, that's why you signed with Ohio State. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
That's kind of
There those
crazy.
those
I
Ohio
see him.
State kids are a little different, man.
I see him personally as a nickel. I would love to see him as like a
Hmm.
nickel fly around guy, like make plays in the
Yeah.
box, make play, cover the other team, slot receiver. But yeah, I think pound for pound, he may be the best athlete in the DB room for sure, and maybe
Hmm.
on the
He's
roster.
he's up there, man. He's up there.
Let's go through some of these non-conference games. Kind of go through it kind of quickly because, like I said, honestly, I played with Baylor on my dynasty. First 4 weeks, really excited. Conference schedule, Auburn, obviously Friday night showcase game on the 29th. SEC team, your last loss was to an SEC team. Two transfer quarterbacks, two of the most dynamic receivers in college football. Just what's your view on that game for Baylor, and what statement does it make if they win, and what does it mean if they lose?
Yeah, I think that this is one of the most important games, not just for Baylor, but I think it's one of the most important games in the Big 12 this year because like Auburn's going to be a middle class team in the SEC, and Baylor aspires to be one of the best of the Big 12. If you lose a game like this on your home field on national television on a day that everybody's watching this game on a Friday, like that is something that's going to be really hard to come back from, not just for Baylor, but like for perception of the Big 12 because like again you have to take advantage of these opportunities, especially when you're lined up against the SEC. And the other piece of this too is that I think that Baylor is a substantially better team than Auburn. Like I think that you look at Auburn right now, they're phenomenal at receiver, like really, really, really good at receiver. They're pretty good on the defensive line. But like the rest of the roster is kind of a mess. And obviously last year they had struggles at quarterback. Well, I think that they might have downgraded at the position, going from Peyton Thorne to Jackson Arnold. I think that Jackson has a lot of talent, but it's like for him to have to take over and perform right away. That's a lot to ask in a year where if it goes poorly, like Hugh Freeze might not be back in 2026. They lost Jarquez Hunter to the NFL. I don't think that they have the kind of talent at running back to be able to replace him at a consistent level. They weren't very good on the offensive line last year. Their secondary has been a little bit of a mess. Like Baylor has to take advantage of this game and of this moment. And if they come out and have a really good performance, like Baylor could be in the top 20 by that very next week.
Hmm. Okay. And so crazy. Like I think national perception wise, that week one game definitely gonna draw the eyes. For my money, week two is the game I'm a little bit more interested to see. Obviously, we both know you're just going up right up I-30 to go see SMU, a playoff team, and Kevin Jennings and company. I think this has major implications in terms of recruiting and perception as well. So give me your thoughts on that game and one of the games, one of the I say few. Um, like I said, talent wise, there's some higher ceiling guys in the Big 12. But I do think this is one of the games to where you could potentially look at this and be like, hey, Baylor may not have the better quarterback in the matchup. Sans Penn State Kevin Jennings. That was a disaster class.
No, and I mean I think it's going to be a really interesting quarterback battle. I would personally give a slight edge to Sawyer, but it's very very close, and Kevin's going to be obviously on his home field, and I think that so there's two pieces of this. One, I think that from a football perspective, this would be a worse loss to lose, just because one, I mean you're going to have a lot of Big 12 versus ACC for that number two spot, for getting a second team into the 12 team playoff. And two, like I think that SMU is going to be a little bit of a diminished team from what they were last year after losing a couple of key guys like Brashard Smith at running back for them, a couple of line guys. So like again, I think that this would be maybe a little bit of a worse football loss, but again, the thing that probably does save you, especially if you win in week one, this game's on the CW. I don't think it's going to be as watched as a primetime Auburn game on Fox. So, like, I think that if you build some credibility with the Auburn win, you can survive losing this game. But, like you said, I mean, these are two programs that recruit against each other. These are staffs that are very familiar with each other. They're only 100 miles from each other. I know that well. I live not far from SMU and obviously go down to Baylor all the time. And so, like, it's a big game, I think, for just proving yourselves and also proving that you can keep the momentum going. And look, if you beat Auburn in week one and SMU in week two, like you're definitely in the top 15 at that point. And so like these are such like this is as hard a non-conference slate as any team in the Big 12. But then the other piece of that too is that there's more opportunity here than almost any other team in the Big 12.
Mm, okay. Okay. We love it. We love it. Last one for me that I'll touch on because I mean this is still a conference game, but this is your playoff representative, Arizona State. I think the only game where I would definitively say Baylor definitively is at a disadvantage of quarterback. I'm a big Sam Levitt guy. Ryan said that he, as a guy that diagnosed ADHD, he thinks that Sam Levitt made two because he's a boomer bust guy, which great from a viewing experience. I bet it is horrendous from a coaching experience. Let's just say for whatever sake you split the SMU Auburn game. How important is the Arizona State game in terms of knocking off your conference playoff representative, and then just what kind of tone that sets for the rest of conference play?
Well, and let's just, for our purposes, let's look ahead in the schedule a little bit, right? You open with Arizona State, you go to Oklahoma State, you play Kansas State at home, you go to TCU. So before October 18th, you've played potentially five teams that see themselves as playoff contenders with Auburn, SMU, Arizona State, Kansas State, TCU. If you come out of that stretch 5-1, then you are probably the favorite in the Big 12. If and you are probably on the short list of teams that should almost expect to be in the playoff conversation, even if you don't win the Big 12. Because again, that's so many of these top level teams. And the nice thing for you is that you get Auburn, Arizona State, Kansas State at home, but the Arizona State game, similar deal, right? Like if you're in the top 25 heading into this game against ASU, this is one of the marquee games of the Big 12 season, and you get it at home. You get it in front of your home crowd. And like that's the one thing is that Baylor's got a lot of tough games this year with Arizona State, Kansas State, TCU, Utah, but outside of that TCU game, all of them are at home. And so you got to take advantage of home field advantage here. So, again, I think that Kenny Dillingham and that program are seen as the ascendant program in the Big 12 last now after what they did last year. And like you said, I mean, you've got this is the game on your schedule. You're playing a quarterback who is consensus seen as better than you. I think that they're very, very close, but like Sam Levitt clearly deserves that edge right now. So a lot of storylines, I think, coming into this one. They also, by the way, have the best receiver in the Big 12 and Jordan Tyson as well.
Maybe in the
So
country, that kid is
yeah,
cold.
yeah,
That,
he
he
well,
gotta be.
not the country. Jeremiah Smith
Oh no,
exists, but
I would tip it. You're definitely right. You're definitely right.
I think he has a case for, well, I think he has a case for two. Like he was at least on my first team All-America that I submitted to
He'll be a
CBS.
Belinda finalist for sure, huh?
Yeah. And so like this is an elite passing game. It's
Yeah.
and so this is going to be your first. Well, I mean, obviously Auburn's going to test your secondary at receiver, probably less so at quarterback. Well, this is the game where you've got the quarterback receiver combo that's really going to give you trouble if you haven't fixed that secondary. So it's a huge game for setting the tone. Like I said, if you escape that first 6 game stretch at 5-1, like you should expect to be in the playoff almost at that point. Now, again, obviously things have to happen, right? You have to win your games from there, but like when you talk about this strength of schedule, 11 power conference games, 2 games in the first 4 against teams that were in the playoff last year, a game against an SEC opponent. You'll in the second half of the year you get Utah as well, who's going to be a Big 12 contender. Like I think that at even 10-2, this team should feel really good about where they sit in the playoff conversation because of how tough their schedule is.
Mm. Winding down for me, I know you got a lot of stuff going on today. Just take me through. I was kind of laid out the best case scenario, I think. But based on the schedule and what we think about this team, take me through a best case scenario for Baylor in 2025 and what that means for DA in the program, and then a worst case scenario and what that would mean for DA in the program.
Well, I think the best case scenario is to be right around 10, 11 wins, to be in Arlington, to be contending for the Big 12, to have a chance to go to the college football playoff. And by the way, I think that real success would be to go to Arlington knowing that you're in pretty good shape for the playoff, win or lose that game. Like that you have a chance to be an at-large as well, because that's a perception thing that impacts the way that people see you, not just this year, but heading forward, if you're seen as a team that can get in as an at-large as well. The worst case scenario, let's for a second go back and look at Dave Aranda's tenure, right? He goes 2-7 in year 1, he goes 12-2 in year 2, he goes 6-7 in year 3, 3-9 in year 4, 8-5 in year 5. So what that tells you is that they have been a boom or bust program. They don't want to be, and frankly, they shouldn't be. This is too good a program to be a boom or bust program. So the worst case scenario for this is to be back in competing for a bowl game territory. Like after last year, Dave Aranda got off the hot seat. He's locked in now as Baylor's head coach. I think that it would be a disastrous situation, frankly, if all of a sudden he was back fighting for bowl eligibility and back on the hot seat. Like it reminds me a little bit of back in 2023, West Virginia was picked last in the Big 12. They go and win 9 games, but the next year they're completely underwhelming. And they're just like, we're not doing this again. Like we're not. And I think that don't get me wrong. I think regardless, especially with the way that they're recruiting, it's very unlikely that they end up in a position where they actually fire Dave. But like, you just don't want to be back in that world because it's been like 3 years of living in the world of Dave Aranda being on the hot seat. You just want to leave the season with him locked in, whether or not you're able to hit all of your goals.
And I think is that the Dana Holgerson, West Virginia tenure that you
That
were
was Neil Brown. That was Neil
Bill
Brown.
Brown. Oh, I can't even picture them off the top of my head. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't
Well,
know,
that's
but
how the thing with Neil Brown's West Virginia is that they during his entire tenure from 2019 to 2024 were never ranked in the AP top 25. They were never relevant. And to be irrelevant in the Big 12 especially is a fate worse than death. Like you will take some swings if you have moments of relevance. Baylor has to get back to relevance this year because they haven't done it consistently since that 2021 season. And like I said, they are very much in good shape to get back to that point.
mm, we'll do some lightning round stuff and we'll let you go because I know you got it. You got a busy day ahead of you. And these are some mailbag stuff. Most underrated player on the Baylor roster.
Who most underrated player on the Baylor roster? I mean, some of the guys that I mentioned. I think I'll say Keaton Thomas at linebacker. I think that he made a few mistakes in year 1, but like he is just a tackling machine, and I love the fact that he came back for another year. I think he's going to only grow in this offense, and whenever you look at Dave Aranda's best defenses at LSU and Wisconsin, they were the teams that were able to blitz with their linebackers. Dave Aranda uses a structure called creepers where he does like a simulated pressure and rushes with linebackers. I, if they're able to use that with Keaton Thomas with consistency completely changes the way that you view this team.
Mm, over under 8.5 wins for Baylor.
If they're under, that would be a very disappointing season. Like I think it would be I think that 9 is the number that they need to be at for this to be considered a good season. They got to 8 last year in a year that they started 2-4. So uh again, I think it would be very disappointing if they don't get to at least 9.
Mm, um, okay, that one literally just popped up. Okay. Is this the most important season of Dave Aranda's tenure here in Waco?
I think last year was more important because it bought him more time, but this is the year where things have to come together. I think that I think last year was the year that we learned whether he's going to be around. This is the year where we figure out what his ceiling is because um, I've made this comparison a few times. I've been around Baylor for, close to 15 years now. Back in so 2011, RG3 wins the Heisman. 2012, they kind of have a lackluster season, find themselves in the second half. It sets up a Big 12 title season in 2013. 2018, they kind of have a middling season, figure out some stuff at the end of the year. 2019, they make it to the Big 12 title game. This has to be 2013 or 2019, right? Like last year can be the setup season. If you don't deliver something, that's disappointing. But I think the setup was more important for Dave Aranda than the delivery.
Mm, okay. I think you already answered this one. Which of Auburn and SMU is more important? I
Yeah, I
think
think
I can't remember what you said.
yeah. I think it's Auburn just because of the stage going against an SEC team, national television. And again, it's just really a team that you should be better than.
Mm. My boy at the end, Baylor Homer, shout out the new Waco Bear. He tried to do a 5 for 1. I'm only gonna answer two because we went through three. What does the defensive line room look like? And one thing we didn't touch on a bunch was what does your receiver room look like in terms of weapons for Sawyer? Agent Hawkins, a big get back for this room, but even around him, so what's your evaluation of the Baylor D line room? Not a lot of punch in the pass rush game last year. And then what's your evaluation of the wide receiver room?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the addition of Hawkins back is a huge deal. Like they just did not have somebody who was a clear burner at that slot receiver spot. I think that him coming back and the way that I always view depth in this sort of situation is like how much does it benefit a room to kind of just push everybody down a spot, right? To have a one, to have a two, and then the guy who was going to be two, be three, and the guy who's going to be, et cetera, right? So this goes from being a good enough room to I think potentially a good room, right? They bring in Kobe Prentice from Alabama, who was a huge part of their blocking game actually last year in the running game. I think that's going to be a big deal. You kind of need one of Cole Wilson, Jaden Porter to break out probably to really like cement this is your group of four. But like I think that you should feel really good with Hawkins coming back, how that room looks. Defensive line is interesting, of course. Jackie Marshall finally being healthy is a big deal. And I think that after the past couple of years, Aranda has done a really good job of acknowledging we just have to have bodies at defensive tackle. Because when you look at in 2023 and their collapse, it was straight up just that they were playing 260-pound guys at D tackle because of injuries. And so they have, I think, been really aggressive, just be like, let's make sure we have three or four in there. They just added a kid, right, from Saddleback College out in California, who's again, probably not a guy who needs to play this year, but he's also, 6'2", 290. And so at least that gives you a little bit of meat just in case in that room. So, I- the question for me kind of is like, okay, what level of pass rush are you getting? That's probably my big question with them. Amorian Winston coming in, Matthew Fobbs White coming in from Tulane, but like that's probably the one thing that I'm a little like, okay, I feel like you're just okay in the pass rush right now. And maybe you get it from Travion Barnes and Keaton Thomas as well, but like it would really, really help if there's a DN slash edge linebacker who's able to step up into a true pass rush role.
No, I said the same thing because they only had 24 sacks last year.
Yeah.
Lost your top four rushers. a guy that I covered at Syracuse that actually made his way down to Waco, Steve Linton. I think Steve is playing in the UFL
I forgot
now.
he started at Syracuse. That's crazy because he was at Tech in between that too.
Was. That's my dog too. He's from Georgia. So two Southern boys in upstate New York. We hit it off quick. Steve is my dog. You didn't have a traditional pass rush body on the roster last year outside of Steve, and you lose him. And I'm pretty high on Matthew Files White. I think he's a really explosive guy at Tulane. But outside of him, yeah, it does look like it's gonna be a situation where the what is it? The sum needs to be greater than the total of the
Hmm.
parts. Like I
Yeah.
said, Keaton Thomas, Travion Barnes, those guys are gonna be they're gonna have
Well,
to get pressure. Yeah. I don't
and
I'd say like is this a situation where can you forecast any way that you see where DA can consistently create pressure by just rushing four?
it's hard for me to see that right now. Now, the thing that I'll say too, right, is like I think that one piece that they have not had, I mean, almost for the last 3 years, is a dynamic player at that nickel star position. And I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned, because I haven't been able to talk to their defensive staff since he got on campus. But I mean, if Calvin Simpson Hunt grows into that type of player, I mean, the way that Dave Aranda's 2021 defense was built was around Jalen Petrie, right? Who's now with the Houston Texans. And it was because he had done everything over the course of his career. So they lined him up on the edge, they lined him up in coverage, they lined him up at like they lined him up everywhere. And so I think that if a player like that, it doesn't have to be Calvin, but if you have a player like that, it just completely changes the chess game that Dave Aranda is able to play.
Mm. John, thank you so much, buddy. You gave me way more of your time than you needed to, especially with your schedule today. I really appreciate you. I'm excited. Will you be down here for any home games for Baylor?
I'll be down there for Baylor Auburn. It's I love that it's very helpful for me when it's a Friday game because Saturdays are real busy for me. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm
you told me
glad
your
that
viewing schedule. You put on Twitter your viewing schedule, and that just maybe made my head spin 3 weeks out. But I feel you. I feel you. I love YouTube
it's what you
TV.
got to do. It's
They
what you
give you
got to
the
do.
quad box option. Um, it can be a little overwhelming. So sometimes I do like the two on the screen and then one on the iPad because I like the
Yeah.
different audios. So I will see you when you make your way down here on the 29th, and hopefully we fulfill some of these expectations. We can meet up again in Arlington. Delay down the road. Plug anything that you got going on. You talked about some stuff, some Baylor stuff that you got going on. Plug your Texas Tech piece and plug anything else that you got that's out now, anything else that's coming up.
Yeah, well, you can find all my work over at cbssports.com. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Shehan Jeyarajah. Like I mentioned, I have a piece coming out on Sawyer. The week of the Auburn game is the plan right now. And then yeah, I'll be down there as well for Baylor Auburn. And I already know that I at least two appearances I've been scheduled to make on Baylor stuff in addition to this. So I'm sure you'll be, if you're a Baylor fan, you'll probably be seeing a lot of me lately.
You heard the man said, Sean J. Rogers, CBS Sports, Josh Crawford, Baylor Bears on the SI.